So welcome to my quick review series. In this video, we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing with decimals. So I designed this review series to help you review for a math placement exam like ALEKS, but honestly, you can use this as a quick review if you just forgot this particular topic. But just FYI, sometimes I talk about ALEKS and you can ignore that. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. So first thing I want to do is I just want to multiply 24 by 13. I know it doesn't have any decimals in it, but let's just review how would we even do that. So there's a few ways in how you can choose to do this, but if we want to go one of the old school ways, so we can multiply down like this. And so, okay, let's review how would I multiply this by hand, because the ALEKS exam, typically you don't get to have a calculator. I'm assuming you're in a situation where you can't have a calculator, so we might need to know how to do this by hand. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this number first, and 3 times 4. So first numbers, so 3 times 4 is 12. I'm just going to put a little 1 right there so I don't forget that this was a 12, and I'll bring this back in a second. So now that I've done 3 times 4, now I'm going to move on to the next number, 3 times 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So now I have finished multiplying everything that's in the ones column. So when I move to the tens column, I need a placeholder here to show that I have shifted over. Okay, so now I'm going to do this again. 1 times 4 is 4, and 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so let's see. I actually could use a little more space. Let me move this. Okay, that's better. So now that I have these numbers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add everything just straight down. So 2 plus 0 is 2, 7 plus 4 is 11, and then 2 plus the 1 is going to be 3. So this will be 312. Okay, so that's how you multiply in general. So what would I do then if I had 2.4 times 0.13? So what you're going to do actually is the exact same thing. So we're going to line this up as 2.4 times 0.13. And so I'm actually going to ignore the decimals for a second. So I know if I take 3 times this part here, that's going to give me that 72 again. And then I'm going to take 1 times all of this, and I got to carry that 0. So I'm like literally setting this up as if it were just normal multiplication. And then I have this last 0 here. I'm just going to ignore that for a minute. So I go through, I just multiply like usual, and I get this 312. Okay, so now here's the part that is for the decimals. What you do at this point is you count how many decimal spaces there are. So here is 1, 2, 3. However many decimal spaces that there are, what you're going to do is you're going to set up an invisible decimal here, and you're going to move the decimal that many places to the left. 1, 2, 3. There's where the decimal is going to go. So our answer then is going to be 0.312. So it's literally the same as normal multiplication, and whatever way you've decided to multiply is fine. But yeah, the final answer, so you just multiply the numbers together as normal, count the number of decimal places, and then just represent that in the final answer at the end. Okay, so I thought it would be fun to have you do 2 of these. So I know there's different ways to multiply, but go ahead and multiply these together and see what you get, and then we'll compare answers. Okay, so I am just going to set up 4.23 times 5. I'm going to completely ignore the decimal. So 5 times 3 is 15, 5 times 2 is 10, and then I got to add the 1, so that'll be 11. 5 times 4 is 20, and then I got to add the 1, so that's 21. So here's my number that I got, ignoring the decimal, but I have 2 decimal spots here. So now I start here, move it over 2 spots, so my final answer is 21.15. And so now let's do this again with 3.2 times 0.122. I like to have the longer number on top. So once again, I'm just going to ignore the decimals for a moment. So let's see, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 1 is 2. And then I'm going to bring down the 0. So then 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3. So I'll add these together. So this is 4, 10, 9, and 3. Okay, so now I count how many decimal spots I've got. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. So I pretend I have a decimal here. I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be 0.3904. So 0.3904. Okay, so next, let's talk about division. So once again, we're just going to start by reviewing just long division. So I want to divide 42 into 504. So how many times does 42 go into 50? Once. 1 times 42 is 42, so I'm going to subtract that off. 50 minus 42 is 8. Bring down this 4. How many times does 42 go into 84? That would be 2 times. So then 2 times 42 is 84, and now I can see I've got a remainder of 0. So this would equal 12. Okay, so now let's compare that to 42 into 5.04. So when you have a decimal here, it actually is like the same setup. So I have 42 into 5.04. So if you have no decimals here, all you're going to do is you're just going to transfer up the decimal and then do the division as usual. So 42 does not go into 5, so that's going to be a 0. And then we repeat the process. So how many times does 42 go into 50? So don't think of it as 5.0, think of it as just 50 and go that way. So then I can go ahead and subtract off the 42. Oops, sorry, the 42, my bad. Bring down the 4, that goes in twice. So the answer in this case will be 0.12. Okay, so if you're finding this video helpful, I would just like to give a shout out to consider hitting that like button or maybe even the subscribe button, and let's keep going with this. Okay, so what about if I have 50.4 now divided by 4.2? So this is going to be a little different. So I'm going to set this up. So there's a little bit of a trick that you can use here. So for this situation, I'm dividing by a decimal. So I just want you to also appreciate, so the last example, we're dividing by 42, right? Not a decimal. So that's the difference between these. So I'm dividing by a decimal. And so the trick that I'm going to use here is that I'm actually going to take this decimal point. Let me actually use a color here. So I'm going to take this decimal point and I am just going to slide it as far as I need until this 4.2 becomes a whole number. So I've only got to slide it over one spot. However many spots I slide that over to the right, I need to also do that here. And so you'll notice then this turns into 42 dividing into 504. So this is the same problem that we started with, right? So the answer here will be 12. And so the question is usually, well, do I have to do anything after the fact since we adjusted the decimals? You don't. So since we did this equally on both sides, everything's all good here. So there's nothing else that we need to adjust. Okay, so why don't you give this a shot now? Pause the video here. Let's see how you're understanding it. Hit play when you're ready. Okay, so I am once again dividing by a decimal. So I have 4.25 divided by 0.5. So since I am dividing by a decimal, I am going to take this decimal point and move it one spot this way, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So now my division problem is 5 into 42.5, and so now we can just run with this. So how many times does 5 go into 42? That would be 8 times. 8 times 5 is 40. So 42 minus 40 is 2. Now I bring the 5 down. And I do have to bring this decimal up here, right? So I'm just going to boop, boop. Okay, so how many times does 5 go into 25? That would be 5 times. So my answer here is going to be 8.5. Okay, so let's try this again. Let's do this 4.1. Let's see, actually, maybe I'll write it over here. So I've got 4.1 into 12.3. So I'm going to take this decimal, move them over one spot. And so then I've just got 41 into 123. And so now this will just go in 3 times. So 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 4 is 12. So this is just 3 would just be the answer, and that's it. Okay, so now let's do 2 more. Pause here, hit play when you're ready. Okay, so once again, so I'm going to set this up. So I've got this 0.04 going into this 0.6. So now in this case, so I need to move this decimal over 2 spots. So when I move this decimal over 2 spots, what do you think goes in the empty spot? It would be a 0. So now I'm just going to divide 4 into 60, and 4 goes into 6 once. Subtract off the 4. Bring down the 0. 4 goes into 25 times. So the answer here would be 15. And finally, now I've got 3 into 1.2. So I'm just going to bring this decimal up. So 3 goes into 1 0 times. How many times does 3 go into 12? 4 times. So the answer here will just be 0.4. So hopefully this clears up some of the confusion that comes up sometimes with decimals. This is one of those things that I think is kind of easy to forget. Just as an FYI, you really can't master math by watching a ton of YouTube videos. You do have to practice it. So each one of my review videos has a companion additional practice problem set. So this is a free PDF of problems and answer key, and also I have another YouTube video to show you how to work out any problem if you're not sure. So I strongly recommend that you go and just test yourself on how well you understand this topic now. So you can find it all for free at Divide and Conquer Math, and then just go to the review section. My review series, by the way, has many other topics in it. So each topic includes a refresher video, practice problems, the answer key, all the worked out video solutions, all that good stuff. So it's all free. Just go to divideandconquermath.com, hit the review section, and hopefully we will see you there. Okay, guys, so I will talk to you in another video. Bye!